Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Happy Thursday. Hope you guys, I hope you're doing well. I know I am. Fantasy draft last night. I like my team. We'll see how it goes. Honestly, I just don't want to come in last. That's really how I feel about it. You know, if I win, that's cool, but really, I just don't want to come in last. So, someone else who doesn't want to come in last, because if he does, he will be fired. Talking about the one and only, Chris Ballard. He had to do a bunch of media stuff yesterday, was asked about cuts and Anthony Richardson, and if he felt like he was on the hot seat, all sorts of things. But one of the hot button topics for this Colts team all off season that Chris Ballard was asked about was the secondary. He was asked how he feels about this young, unproven secondary heading into the season.
They're young. They're going to continue to get better. Sometimes you got to be able to meet, like, things don't always work out, even when you're trying to acquire a player. I'm not saying we didn't try to do some things. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. But we do think we have good young talent back there, and we have a lot of belief in our front. So we'll continue to let these guys grow and come on. They don't become players without playing. I mean, I think sometimes we forget that. They got to play.
That was Colts GM Chris Ballard talking about this young secondary, and I get what he's saying. You got to play in order to develop and become better and all of those type of things. And we've seen this happen to players before. We've seen players, start the season off a little bit slow, especially young players, but as the season progresses, they progress with it. And by the end of the year, they're pretty solid. And I hope that this Indianapolis Colts secondary has a Jordan Love-like performance this year. Okay, last year was Jordan Love's first year as the starter in Green Bay, sat on the bench for 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers. And there were some ups and downs through the first half of the season. A lot of those were downs. He wasn't very good. Just like how I expect for this Indianapolis Colts secondary to not be very good to start the season. When you look at Jordan Love and how he played through the first half of the year, he was bad. No way around it. People were completely out on him. People ridiculed the Packers for drafting him in the first round, trading up to draft him in the first round. And rightfully so, because the first 8 games of last year, Jordan Love was terrible. He threw for about 1,700 yards, 12 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he only completed 59% of his passes. That's about what Will Levis did in 9 games last year. Jordan Love was Will Levis for the first 9 games last year. That's not very good. And they were 3-5. 3-5. They weren't winning games, and Jordan Love was a large part of why they weren't winning games. And then things turned around. In the final 9 games of last season for Jordan Love, he threw for 2,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, and he completed 68% of his passes. Okay, and the Packers won enough games to sneak into the playoffs and beat the Cowboys in the first round. It's pretty incredible. It was quite the turnaround. He completely flipped the script from the first half of the season. The more he played, the better he got. Eventually, the light bulb went off, and Jordan Love became one of the better quarterbacks in the NFC last year. Now, he's making a ton of money. Everyone loves him. Everyone loves the future of the Packers. But early in the year last year, there were a lot of struggles, and the Packers didn't look like a playoff team because their young quarterback that hadn't played a lot just wasn't very good. They were 3-5. Seemed like they were going to be drafting a new quarterback this year. But then Jordan Love figured it out. And geez, I hope that that's what we see from this Colts secondary. Because Chris Ballard is right. This secondary is incredibly young. Jalen Jones, who's going to be corner number 2 alongside Juju Brents, they're both only in their second years in the NFL. Julian Blackmon's been around for a decent amount of time, but he's only like 25. Nick Cross is 23. He's going to be the other starting safety. Like, this Colts secondary is young, and like young quarterbacks, young players at every position have ups and downs. And we saw this with Jordan Love last year playing quarterback. And eventually he figured it out. And because of that, I don't think it's out of the question to say that this Colts secondary won't eventually figure it out. Right? Because quarterback is a much tougher position to play than cornerback or safety. Right? If Jordan Love can figure out how to play quarterback at an incredibly elite level, 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 2,400 yards passing, like if he stays on that pace this year, he'll hands down win the MVP. So if he can go from bad to elite over the course of 8 games, then this Colts secondary can't go from bad to above average over the course of the season. I don't think that it's out of the question. Okay. And the other thing about this, when I look at this secondary and I listen to that quote from Chris Ballard talking about how young this secondary is, and, in that quote, he mentions that they're really going to lean on the defensive line because they love the defensive line, and they should. All right. And because the defensive line is as good and as deep as it is, Chris Ballard has this luxury that he can take a gamble on the secondary. Later in his press conference, he talks about how every team in the NFL has holes. And he's right? Because it's a salary cap league. There are certain positions that you have to sacrifice a little bit of money at, maybe be a little, less good there to be better somewhere else. And that's clearly what the Colts have done on the defensive side of the ball. They've invested less money in the secondary and more of it into the defensive line. And because of that, Chris Ballard and this team believes that the Colts defensive line is going to make up for the lack of production for the youth that's in the secondary until they hopefully eventually develop into good players. And look, like this Colts defensive line should be good. Okay, they were good last year. Okay, the Colts were 3rd in sacks as a team last year in the NFL. Pretty good to me. And they bring all of those contributors back minus Ebukam, who tore his Achilles, even though he's on the IR, but could potentially return this season. Chris Ballard said yesterday, though, that that's a long shot. Look, the dude tore his Achilles. He's not coming back. But Ebukam's gone, but they're bringing in at.to, who people swear by. All right, and they're bringing in Raekwon Davis, who was pretty good in Miami last year. Isaiah Land is new as well. I thought he looked good in the preseason. I think they're better up front this year than they were last year. And hopefully, over the first half of the season, when the secondary is hopefully developing into good players and they're struggling, hopefully this Colts defensive line can make up for the lack of talent and the lack of experience on the back end. If the Jordan Love development arc happens for the Colts secondary this year, then the front has to dominate early. But the back half of the year, while the front is hopefully still dominating and the defensive backs have gotten better, then this could be a really good defense. But that secondary has to develop. And if it does, then this Indianapolis Colts team should make the playoffs. And that is the expectation that Chris Ballard has for this unit. He was asked yesterday, is this a team that should compete for something? And here's what Chris Ballard had to say about that.
We feel like we will be in the mix. Look, we were in the mix a year ago. And sometimes, I think I said this earlier, where sometimes the scars are good for you. Hard times can be good for you. Defeat, failure can be good for you if you handle it right. I have a lot of belief in the leadership, one of Shane, but also these players, from guys that have been there and been through a lot, and they're all good players and they're all committed. It'll be fun to watch this team grow through the season and go through it.
Chris Ballard talking about how he expects for this team to be in the mix, and by in the mix, he means compete for a playoff spot. And he's right. They were in the mix last year, had a real opportunity to make the playoffs. If Gardner Minshew can complete a swing pass, then it probably happens. But look, you heard it from Ballard right there. He thinks that they should make the playoffs. He thinks that this is a playoff caliber roster. Everyone else does as well. I don't know if you remember Kirk Herbstreit waxing poetic about how good this roster is. And he's right. They should make the playoffs this year. They really, really should. They're bringing everyone back who, should have made the playoffs last year. And, Anthony Richardson's going to be the best quarterback ever this year. He has to be because he's on my fantasy team. That's how that works, right? But no, seriously. Look, if Anthony Richardson is able to be just as good as Gardner Minshew was last year, if he can be a little bit better, then that would be great. But look, if he is, then this Colts team should make the playoffs. Okay, they should, at a minimum, be a wild card team and potentially even compete for the division. And look, we all know this. We can talk about the secondary. We can talk about how great the defensive line is. We can talk about, how deep the offensive line is, all those things. But ultimately, the Colts' success this year comes down to one person, and that one person is Anthony Richardson. Everyone knows that. When you look at this Colts team, it's like, I like the receivers. I like the defensive line. The secondary is going to keep me up at night. But, man, it all comes down to Anthony Richardson. And Chris Ballard was asked about what his expectations were for Anthony Richardson this season.
To play winning football, there's going to be some roller coaster moments. I won't say all, but most quarterbacks, when they're young, go through those moments. There's going to be. But learn from them, grow, and keep moving forward. I think you can just kind of look around the league with, some guys that with Anthony's skill set, it was a little bit up and down. One thing I have a lot of confidence in Shane and Jim Bob and all the offensive staff. They'll do what he is really good at and comfortable doing, and then what the offense can do.
Chris Ballard, man, just preaching to the choir. If the choir was just me, Chris Ballard is exactly right in that clip. Anthony Richardson is going to be up and down like any young quarterback. Peyton Manning was up and down. Andrew Luck had some up and down moments. Okay, Patrick Mahomes had up and down moments early in his career. Josh Allen has been up and down early in his career. Lamar Jackson was up and down early in his career. Jalen Hurts was up and down early in his career. I could just keep on running through them because it's normal for 22-year-old quarterbacks in the NFL to have some up and down moments, especially when they're the second youngest starter in the NFL, which as of right now, if Drake May winds up being the starter in New England, Anthony Richardson would be the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL. And guess what? If Drake May doesn't start in New England, which he shouldn't if you ask me, then Anthony Richardson will be the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL this year. He's going to be up and down. But that's why Shane Steichen was brought here. Shane Steichen was brought and hired by the Indianapolis Colts to help develop Anthony Richardson. He was hired and brought in to consistently put him in good spots. That is why Shane Steichen was hired. And that is what he is expected to do this year. And there's a part of me that kind of feels bad for Anthony Richardson. People love Shane Steichen. I am one of them. I am one of the Shane Steichen apologists. I will defend that guy and the way that the Colts season went last year for forever. But here's the thing. Because people love Shane Steichen so much, it's to a point where if Anthony Richardson is bad, then people are going to blame Anthony Richardson because Shane Steichen is so great that if a quarterback's bad, it could never be Shane Steichen's fault. And if Anthony Richardson's good, then everyone's going to sit back and be like, oh, this young, raw quarterback that's only started 23 games in his life from high school, college, and his 4 starts last year, there's no way that he can be good all on his own. So it must be because Shane Steichen is great. That is really where I feel like we are going to wind up this year. It's going to be a lot of, if the Colts are good, it'll be a lot of ranting and raving about how great Shane Steichen is. And if the Colts are bad this year, it'll be a lot of ranting and raving about how awful Anthony Richardson is. So I kind of feel bad for the guy. But hey, man, it comes with the territory of playing in the NFL. Something else that comes with the territory of playing in the NFL is knowing that you're in a competitive league and your job is entirely dependent upon your success, just like just about every other job in the world. Your job and whether or not you get fired or not is directly dependent upon how successful you are. And Chris Ballard hasn't been successful. So he was asked once yesterday if he felt like he was on the hot seat. Chris Ballard likes to talk. He didn't like answering this question, though. His answer was short and straight to the point.
I think every year you do. I mean, that's kind of how I'm wired, but no different than any other year.
Yeah, whatever. As soon as the guy started asking the question, Chris Ballard was shaking his head like, no, I'm not on the hot seat. I'll be fine. No different than any other year, even though the Colts haven't made the playoffs the last 3 years. And I know that we like to make fun of Stephen Holder on this radio station in general, but he did a good job yesterday. He didn't let Chris Ballard off the hook. He followed up with another question later saying, you know what you have done and you know what you haven't done. You know that you have a losing record. Why should Colts fans believe that you're the guy for the job? And here is what Colts general manager Chris Ballard had to say about why he thinks he's the guy for the job.
I've never I guess maybe because my DNA is not, I've always had a strong belief in myself and those around me, strong belief in what we do. And if you just kind of look through the first few years and, we made the playoffs, 2 of the first 4, had to overcome a, quarterback retiring on us, still found a way. I thought our 20 team was excellent. We just lost a tough game to Buffalo. That ended up being a really good team. And I thought in 21 was another really good football team. And it all kind of fell apart. The last 3 years not making the playoffs, it's a disappointment. I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't. But I still have a very strong belief in what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're going to get there. And that will not – either you believe for something or you believe nothing. Like, it's easy to vacillate and go with what the world wants you to do. You either believe in something or you don't. This is what we believe. If it gets me fired, so be it.
Chris Ballard just going on and on and on right there. Some of it was a bunch of hooey. You either believe in something or you don't. Well, yeah, that's a line straight from Hamilton, okay? I guarantee you Chris Ballard out here watching Hamilton and quoting it. That's funny. But he's not changing his ways. He's not changing a single thing about how he has built this team. He is committed to building through the draft. He is committed to not signing free agents. He is committed to not trying to make big trades. And he's committed to focusing a lot of the Colts' resources to the offensive and defensive line. Like it's plain as day right there in that clip. He's not wavering from how he has continued to build this team. And look, it's all going to come down to Anthony Richardson. If Anthony Richardson's good, Chris Ballard's going to look like a genius. People are going to sing his praises. But if Anthony Richardson's bad, then Chris Ballard's running right out the door behind him. And as I sat back and as I listened to this, man, all I could think about was pride. Seriously. Like there are a lot of people in the world where their pride has ruined their careers, and it looks like it might ruin Chris Ballard's as well. There are a lot of successful people in the world who had to change their ways to become successful. That's not Chris Ballard, though. He's too prideful. He's going to do things his way, and if it works out for him, then it works out. And if it doesn't work out for him, then it doesn't. Okay? He needs to be a little more humble, I think. If you're failing, you need to be willing to listen to other people and make some slight tweaks to how you're going about things. And when I look at Chris Ballard, he's got 2 really simple options. He can be humble, he can change his ways, he can listen to outside counsel, or he can continue to be prideful, continue to do things his way, and continue to go 9-8 and eventually no longer be the Colts general manager. And it feels like we are headed in that direction based off of what he just said right there. And as I listened to the entire Chris Ballard press conference yesterday, something stuck out to me like a sore thumb. And I got to talk about it. Chris Ballard, one of his biggest issues, something that I haven't even talked about yet, but something that I've probably been missing for way too long. Chris Ballard, one of his biggest issues. I'm going to tell you what it is when we come back here in 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
More winners, more often. Zack Gray, professional sports gambler, set to join me top of the hour, 11 o'clock, giving out college football picks for the weekend. Cannot wait to have him on. I'm sure we'll end up talking a little Colorado as well. They play tonight, 8 o'clock against North Dakota State. Yeah, give me North Dakota State. I'm telling you that right now. I got more on that later. I want to talk about Chris Ballard and this new thing that I have realized with him just listening to his press conference from yesterday. I believe that Chris Ballard is simply too concerned with 5 years down the road. There's a saying that general managers are concerned about what the team is going to look like in 5 years, and coaches are worried about what the team looks like right now. And I would say that that's true, right? Because coaches, their job security is solely based on, are we winning right now? Whereas general managers, their job is solely based on selling the future of the organization to the owner. Okay. And so whenever I was thinking about this, I thought, general managers, Chris Ballard, to be more specific, directs the franchise like how my wonderful, wonderful wife drives when we go on vacation. Love my wife. She's a good driver, but the way that she drives just drives me nuts. Can't stand it. Okay. And it's not because she's like cutting people off and like doing dumb things. She's just incredibly patient. And it's a wonderful, wonderful, virtue that she has. Like gets in the right lane, sets the cruise control to the speed limit. Hey, Jonathan, I really like this new song. Can we listen to it? Yeah, sure, that's fine. Oh, Jonathan, there's this new podcast that I found. It's wonderful. Can we listen to it? Sure, that's fine. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there. I'm looking at how fast she's driving, and I'm trying not to be like, hey, can we go like 5 miles an hour over the speed limit? Like, is that like even an option? But no, I sit there, I keep my mouth shut, I read my book, listen to, whatever she wants to, and we have a good time. Meanwhile, coaches direct their teams like how I drive when I go on vacation. I'm not putting this thing on cruise control. I'm getting in the left lane, and I'm going by everybody because I want to get there right now. Okay, it's not about the journey for me when I go on vacation. That's like, you've probably heard that saying before. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Yeah, that's a load of crap. I'm getting in the left lane, I'm going 85 miles an hour, and I'm getting to where I need to go because I don't want to be stuck behind this stupid semi that's going under the speed limit. Okay, that is how coaches direct their teams. Quickly, impatient, let's win now. General managers, though, hey, let's slow down. Let's enjoy the ride. Right? That's how general managers act. And more specifically, that is how Chris Ballard behaves. And he is simply too patient. When Chris Ballard speaks, it is always about development. It is never about this year. It is always about, we think next year this guy is going to be really good. It's sayings like, Nick Cross, he just needs more reps and he's going to be a good player. He said yesterday it's not his fault that we drafted him when he was so young. You're right, Chris Ballard. That's your fault. You probably shouldn't have wasted a pick on him if you didn't think he was going to be good. But, whatever. He just needs more reps. Anthony Richardson, he just needs more reps. at.to, he's going to be a game changer. He just needs some reps. Maybe in like a year or two, he'll be awesome. He makes statements like that all the time, which is partially understandable because he is the general manager and it is his job to oversee the future of the Colts franchise. But at some point, this thing has to click off in your brain as a general manager where you say, we have a good team. I like this guy at quarterback. I think this guy is good. If we add this one piece, then we can win right now. And Chris Ballard hasn't shown that he has that switch in his brain. Right? The best general managers, Brett Veach in Kansas City, does a beautiful job of this. Yes, general managers are supposed to be concerned about the future, but they still have to have the presence of mind to think about the current season. And Chris Ballard hasn't shown that he has that in 8 years. If he had that, then he would have gone and gotten L'Jarius Sneed this year. Because let's be honest, if the Colts had a shutdown corner like L'Jarius Sneed, then people wouldn't be saying, oh, everyone's sleeping on the Colts. They would be talking about the Colts winning the division. Because when you look at the Colts, obviously there's questions around Anthony Richardson. But the other question is, what does the secondary look like? And Chris Ballard and the rest of this Colts organization has voiced the confidence that they have in Anthony Richardson, and they voiced the confidence that they have in Shane Steichen to make Anthony Richardson work. Okay, and so if Chris Ballard really felt that way, how could he not have sat back, looked at the secondary, and been like, you know what? If we make this trade for L'Jarius Sneed, then we could be good this year, not in 2 years. And Chris Ballard has just shown a lack of awareness to go and get players right now and be good right now. Chris Ballard is simply too concerned with 5 years down the road, and that is one of his biggest flaws as a general manager. So instead of going out and getting, L'Jarius Sneed or any good cornerback or going out and signing Justin Simmons to play safety, instead of doing that, Chris Ballard's like, you know what? No, let's give Nick Cross some more reps. Juju Brents just needs some more reps. Jalen Jones just needs some more reps so that in 5 years we'll be good. Look, at some point, Chris Ballard has to take the Colts off cruise control and floor the pedal to go get guys to win right now. At some point, that has to happen, and I just don't think that Chris Ballard has the awareness to actually do that. Speaking of awareness, my guy, Zack Gray, very aware. He's joining the show in 30 minutes to give you winning college football bets. Also, speaking of awareness, some of these NFL players are just dumb. Okay, we saw it with, the top 100 list, right, where all the players vote on the best players in the league. Well, ESPN sent polls out to players and, asked some questions about quarterbacks. Who are the best 3 quarterbacks in the league? Who's the most overrated quarterback? Who's the most underrated quarterback? Yada, yada, all that stuff. And they got some stuff right. Not really, though. According to NFL players, the best 3 quarterbacks in the NFL are Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. Don't mind it. I would have Josh Allen in there. Kind of tough for me to put Lamar Jackson in there when his playoff success is almost non-existent. There's not much there. It's tough for me to put Joe Burrow in there over Josh Allen when Joe Burrow just doesn't play. He's been hurt consistently throughout his entire career in the NFL. Like that's kind of an issue. And I was like, but you know what? They've got Josh Allen at 4, then I'm not going to throw a fit. And then reading through the article, and I realized that Josh Allen was voted the most overrated quarterback. And I had to stop. I was like, that is blasphemy. And it further proves that just because you played a sport doesn't mean that you know more than I do, because anybody with a set of eyes that watches games on Sunday can sit back, watch Josh Allen and be like, geez, the only guy in the NFL who's better than this dude is the guy that wears number 15 in Kansas City. He was voted the most overrated quarterback in the NFL. It's to a point now where I think that Josh Allen might legitimately be underrated. Seriously, I've got people out here telling me that, Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback ever, could wind up being that and all those things. The only guy that Josh Allen has lost to in the playoffs is Patrick Mahomes. That's it. Okay? When we look at Buffalo, it's that defense is, not very good. I mean, they've got Matt Milano, but that's really it. And somehow, some way, the Bills won 6 games in a row last year to win their division. And look, if Stephon Diggs makes a catch last year in the playoffs, then they beat the Chiefs and they potentially go on to the Super Bowl. The fact that NFL players can call Josh Allen overrated is it's absurd to me, considering that he beats literally everyone not named the Kansas City Chiefs. So I saw it yesterday. It really bothered me, and I wanted to bring it up on the show. And then finally, they asked who the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL were, and they got one right. They missed on the other one. 2 guys tied as the most underrated quarterbacks. They both play in the NFC West. One, Matt Stafford, and the guy who tied with him, Brock Purdy. I'm glad that they see that, because Matthew Stafford is awesome. He's been awesome his whole career. He was just buried in Detroit, when Matt Stafford was there, what was one of the worst ran organizations in the NFL. They've obviously turned things around with Dan Campbell and their new general manager, in part because of Matthew Stafford. They traded him away. Rams gave him a bunch of picks, and they have capitalized on those. Purdy, I don't know. I still think that he's propped up by, Kyle Shanahan. Okay. To be totally honest, I think Brock Purdy should have won the vote for the most overrated quarterback in the NFL. He got votes for both, by the way, which I think speaks to no one honestly knows how good Brock Purdy is. No one has any sort of idea. But we do know how good of a basketball player Caitlin Clark is. The Indiana Fever beat the Connecticut Sun last night. Caitlin Clark played well. I wonder who said that the Fever were going to win, and I wonder who said that Caitlin Clark would be a lot better. I don't know who said that. I think it was someone who hosts a show on Indy Sports Ticket between 10 and noon. I don't really know, though. I've got thoughts on that game when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket, top of the hour, 11 o'clock. I'll be joined by the one and only Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. He's got a little algorithm thing. I don't know. I'm not quite smart enough to understand it. But, you know, he's going to join. He's going to tell you who's going to win, who's going to cover, all those things. Top of the hour, about 20 minutes away from that. Cannot wait to have my guy, Zack Gray, join the show. But, you know, I got 20 minutes to talk before he shows up, and I have to discuss the Indiana Fever winning last night at home against the Connecticut Sun, 84-80. That is a potential WNBA playoff preview. With where we stand today, the Indiana Fever are currently 7th in the standings, while the Connecticut Sun are 2nd. But the Indiana Fever are only half a game out of 6th. So there's a world where they move up, and, you know, we kind of maneuver from there. So they look good last night. Caitlin Clark continues to play well. I said it on the show yesterday. I thought that she would. 19 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. She didn't play as well as I thought she would. I thought she'd have a real dominant performance, but much better than how she played in the first 3 games that they played against the Connecticut Sun. You know, previous game, she's going like minus 30, minus 18. Like she just had some really tough games, and the Fever just didn't look very good when she was on the floor. Whereas opposed to last night, +3 when Caitlin Clark was on the floor, second leader in scoring on the night with 19 points. Kelsey Mitchell just continues to be nothing but a pure bucket getter. She's so good. Plays incredibly fast. Love the speed that she plays with. She shot the crap out of the ball last night. 8 of 14 from the field, 4 of 7 from 3, 23 points. Look, when she leads the Fever team in scoring, man, they're really, really tough to beat. They just are. Aaliyah Boston, another just outstanding game. 10 points, which is a little less than what she usually does. She had 6 rebounds, but she had 8 assists. Aaliyah Boston dishing from the post. Impressive. Really impressive. So Fever look good once again when Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and Caitlin Clark all 3 play well. I mean, good luck. Good luck beating this team. And then when role players start shooting the crap out of the ball, like Lexi Hull did last night, oh my gosh. 5 of 9 from the floor, 4 of 6 from 3. She had 17 points. I mean, and you know, she's guarding the crap out of people too. Like this Indiana Fever team, they're fun. They're really good. This is a legitimate playoff team. They now have more wins against teams over 500 than the Las Vegas Aces, the back-to-back WNBA champs in search of a three-peat. Yeah, the Fever have more wins against teams over 500 than the Aces do. And the Fever have a great opportunity coming up tomorrow night. I'm not too sure if they're at home or if they're on the road, but I do know that they're playing against, you know, everyone's second favorite player in the WNBA, Angel Reese. That's right. We got a little Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese action going on tomorrow night. I will be completely and totally tuned in to that game. I cannot wait for it. They're on the road at Chicago. 7:30 game's going to be on Ion. The Indiana Fever are favored by 5.5, but you can throw the lines out the window when it comes to these games. Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, that you're going to get some sort of drama, something fun and entertaining to watch. That's tomorrow night. But I've been really impressed with this Indiana Fever team. Like right before the Olympic break, you could tell that they had just figured some things out. You know, Caitlin Clark was playing better, distributing the ball better. Her teammates were finishing better. Like they had just clearly turned a corner. Okay, like seriously, like they've turned a corner, and they're incredibly fun to watch. Half a game out of 6th place. They win on Friday. They'll be 500. Like they could finish with a winning record, which I don't think many people really expected from this team. Lynn Dunn is scheduled to join the Dan Dockett show today at 1:15 to talk about the Fever, to talk about Caitlin Clark and everything that they've got going on, because they've got a lot going on. Like that is a really good basketball team right now. They play well as a team. You know, they've added, I wouldn't say they've added depth, but Lexi Hull has really emerged post the Olympic break. They've got this new girl that that played last night. I've never noticed her before. Her name, I'm going to butcher it. Fagbeni. That's I'm assuming you say it. She played 17 minutes. She scored 0 points. She only had 3 rebounds and a block, but she was plus 18 in those 17 minutes. Like, she defended well, did a good job shoring up underneath, like a truly like impressive performance. Like, man, this Fever team, they're fun. They're good. I think that they're going to continue on winning. And, oh, man, it is fantastic. Something else that's fantastic is college football. I love college football. And we have college football tonight. Once again, my guy, Zack Gray, top of the hour, 11 o'clock. He is set to join me. He's going to give you who's going to win, who's going to lose. He's going to give you bets that you can cash in on, okay? He's one of the best sports gamblers that I know. Like, would put him right up there with the sack man, okay? They're like 1A, 1B. Okay, like that's the kind of level that my guy Zack Gray is at. You know, still working on the formula. It'll probably be a little up and down to start the year, but by the end of the year, he's going to figure it out, and you're going to want all the bets that he gives out. He's joining me top of the hour at 11 o'clock. And it shouldn't be a big game. And maybe this is part of why I don't like Deion Sanders. It bothers me because they aren't very good. They went 4-8 last year, but they're on ESPN tonight at 8 o'clock playing against an FCS team. People are going nuts for it. And I'm like, why are we so excited to watch this team that went 4-8 last year? And I get it. Deion Sanders, polarizing figure, all those things. But come on now. There's not another sport in the world where a team could go 4-8 the previous year and people be legitimately excited for them the following year. Like that, it doesn't exist. Okay, it's especially when you look at Colorado. Like it's not like they had any major players hurt last year. Like Shedeur Sanders played all year. Travis Hunter played all year. Like they're two. Like it wasn't like they were missing one of their 2 best players. Like they were legitimately a bad football team last year. And everyone is so incredibly excited. Like, oh, I can't wait to watch Colorado and Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders and Coach Prime. He's got that gold headset that's pretty cool. I don't care about any of that. They went 4-8 last year. Why are people so excited about this? And look, I'm telling you right now, North Dakota State's going to cover at a minimum. Okay, they are 9.5 point underdogs. I gotta be honest, like I would probably take them to win. Seriously. Like I think North Dakota State is going to I think they're gonna win tonight. I almost said that. I think that they're gonna crush Colorado. I don't believe that. I do think that North Dakota State is going to win tonight. Okay, like when I look at Deion Sanders and Colorado and just I think they're all flash, no substance. Seriously, they're like the rappers that rent really nice cars when they go to like premiere events and stuff. Like that is who they remind me of. Seriously, I all flash, no substance. Okay? Like they're the dude that walks around in like fake gold chains. Like that's who they are. All flash, no substance. That is really what I think it boils down to with this Colorado team. Seriously, like you sit back and you watch them, and it's not about blocking. Like when I listen to Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin, even the best coaches in the landscape of college football, the things that they talk about quarterback play. They talk about their offensive line, how well they tackle. Like they focus on these really important aspects of football. And then I look at Colorado. And I look at Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders and the way that those guys talk. It's never about football. It's always about all this other stuff. I think Colorado is just too wrapped up in other things. Like the fact that Deion Sanders would ban a media guy because he called him some names that he didn't like. You know, like the Bruce Lee of BS, which is funny, by the way. Like the fact that he would ban a guy over that, it's like, why are you even worried about that guy? Like you're Deion Sanders, you're about to start a football season, and you're worried about some reporter that people don't even know. Like I didn't even know who the guy was. Like, and you're overly concerned with that. Come on now. I think Colorado's just worried about the wrong things. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And on top of that, when it comes to tonight, their roster is completely revamped. This isn't college basketball. It's not. In basketball, you can bring in 10 new players, 8 new players. You can bring in a whole new rotation of guys that are going to play. And because it's only 12 guys, you can mesh semi-quickly. Okay, we'll still probably take you a few games to figure it out. Probably so. But still, it is much easier to get 12 new guys to mesh than it is to get 22 new players to mesh. That is much more difficult. And when you look at Colorado, they have once again hit the transfer portal incredibly hard. And it's a whole new starting offensive line, new defensive linemen, new defensive backs, new running backs, new wide. And everything's new. Everything is new except for Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and Deion Sanders' other kid. Don't even know his name. Everything else is new. And I just have a hard time believing that they're going to be meshed enough and ready enough to play against North Dakota State, who is one of the more premier FCS programs in the country. Okay, this North Dakota State team, they are notorious for beating FBS teams. That's what they do. They are notorious for running through the FCS playoff every year. North Dakota State, that is a legitimately good football team. And they're kind of old school. Yes, they'll spread you out, but they're tough and they're physical. And I think that when we watch the game tonight, that is what we are going to that's what we're going to think about. We're going to sit back and we're going to watch this FCS North Dakota State team go on the road. I believe that the game is at Colorado. Very rarely do FBS teams travel to FCS stadiums, but North Dakota State is such a big deal that could actually be wrong. So I'm going to double check that. But tonight, 8:00, yeah, North Dakota State is going to go into Colorado tonight, and they are going to push them around. They're going to be tougher, more physical. Colorado's going to have a couple of big plays that pop up on your Twitter feed, and Bleacher Report and ESPN and all these places are going to go crazy. Oh my gosh, did you see that completion that Travis Hunter, or that Shedeur Sanders had to Travis Hunter that resulted in a 78-yard touchdown? Oh my gosh. Things like that are going to happen because the top end talent for Colorado is probably better than the top end talent for North Dakota State. But I'm going to bet on North Dakota State and their toughness and their physicality. I think that they slowly lean on Colorado throughout this game. And we look up and there's 4 minutes left and North Dakota State is up by 4. They have the ball and it's just okay, can they run the clock out? And I think that they're going to. I think they're going to push Colorado around, and it's going to be tough for Deion after the game because he's going to have to go to the podium and have to listen to people question him. And people should question him. They went 4-8 last year. 4-8. Why are we expecting for Colorado to be good? Sure, Shedeur Sanders is a good player. Shedeur Sanders is probably one of the best. He is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. But here's the thing that we have to remember. College football and the NFL are different. They are so incredibly different. Nick Saban, he's on the record saying this. Nick Saban left the Miami Dolphins because he felt like they put together a good team at every single spot except for quarterback. Right? And the NFL is such a quarterback-dependent league that if you don't have a good quarterback, it doesn't matter what you do everywhere else. But he looked at college football, and he was like, I don't have to have a great quarterback to win. I need an average guy who can come in, run some plays, maybe complete a couple of third down throws. But if we're good everywhere else, we can beat anybody. And if you watch Nick Saban, he won multiple national titles without a great quarterback. So while quarterback play is important in college football, of course it is. Okay, I saw Johnny Manziel single-handedly beat Alabama. Quarterback play is important, but it's not but it can be overcome if your quarterback isn't as good, if you're good in all the other areas. And that is honestly what I think we're going to see tonight. North Dakota State, bigger, more physical, tougher. I think they're going to tackle better. I think they're going to block better. And that's ultimately what football comes down to. Can you block the guy in front of you? And can you tackle? If you do those two things better than anyone else, then you're going to win a lot of football games. And once again, when I look at Colorado, their brand is huge. Like Shadur Sanders just signed an NIL deal with Nike. I think he's like the first college or collegiate player in football to do that. And I'm like, why are you signing a guy who just went 4-8? Okay, like with Colorado, it's all about the brand, it's all about the flash, and it's not really about much of anything else. And that is their biggest issue. It's their biggest issue. They're all about the flash, and there's just not enough care about the actual substance, right? And the substance is your offensive line and your defensive line. In college football, if you don't control the trenches, you're not going to win very many games. That's why the SEC has dominated college football for years, because for whatever reason, a lot of the best offensive linemen, they're in the South, they're in Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, and they wind up at those SEC schools and they push other teams around. That's what college football is about. It's about the trenches. And I think North Dakota State wins in the trenches tonight. They beat Deion Sanders. They beat Colorado. And I come on the show tomorrow with a big smile on my face. And I continue to preach that Deion Sanders just doesn't get it, because I don't think that he does. Someone that does get it, though, Zack Gray, he's set to join me here in 5 minutes, top of the hour. He's going to give you, college football bets for tonight and for the weekend. Cannot wait on that. Zack Gray joining me here in 5 minutes to give you some winning bets.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
Well, what's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. It's the top of the hour. Been teasing it all day. My guy, the best sports gambler that I know, my guy, Zack Gray, joins the show. Zach, what's going on, man?
Jay Smith, it's a beautiful Thursday, and college football is back.
Dude, it could be raining right now, and it'd still be a beautiful Thursday, just because, as you said, college football's back.
I've been annoying everyone today, like talking about Colorado, North Dakota State, like completely obscure FBS, FCS games tonight that I am just pumped for.
Is the Colorado, North Dakota State game obscure, though? I feel like everyone's going to be tuned in, even though Colorado went 4-8 last year, and usually people wouldn't care.
Well, everyone is a hater with Colorado, you included. So it's like I have to be the supporter of the Ohio area, because I don't know anyone else that likes Colorado.
Fair enough. I don't know anyone that really likes him either. That's not true. They're like, I don't know. Bleacher Report seems to really like him. Nike clearly likes him. I don't know if you saw that.
That was a sick campaign. That was a really good way to introduce partnership.
It was, but I'm sitting there. I'm like, why are they signing a quarterback that went 4-8 last year?
Oh, here we go.
I think it's a fair question. Joined by my guy, Zack Gray, professional sports gambler, just does a fantastic job. But I'm just saying, I feel like that's something that we should note. Even though to be fair, he probably will be the number one overall pick.
Yeah, they have 2 top 10 draft picks on their roster, and we just hate them.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just not. I don't think I hate them. I'm just not a believer in them eventually being good at some point. I think that's a little more accurate.
Well, we'll see. But I just am excited for this little appetizer. Today. If you check my Twitter, I have a play for tomorrow as well. So I'm kind of getting into the rhythm tonight, and then tomorrow is when we'll see, the grapevine come out.
What are the plays that you like for tonight? I know you sent me a couple, and I don't want to go off script. So what are the plays that you like for really just all the college football games this weekend, including tonight and tomorrow?
Yeah, so there was a time where I was leaning Colorado. That line, I think, I haven't checked it today, but I think it got all the way up to like 10.5. There's some injuries for North Dakota State, I believe. I think their best player is hurt, but so I'm nothing there. But tomorrow night there's a play, if you go to the Twitter. But 2 plays that I really, really like this weekend are Troy -8.5 and Penn State -8. I know you have your thoughts about Penn State, so I don't know where you want to start, but those are my 2 plays. If you don't check my Twitter, if you don't go to my Patreon, those are the 2 to get introduced to what I do over here. So yeah, Penn State or Troy, which one you want to talk about?
Let's start with Penn State, because you're right. I'm not a Penn State guy. I think that they're overrated every year. But with that being said, I don't think that West Virginia is very good. When the line came out and they were favored by 8, I was like, that felt low. So I'm with you. I like Penn State to cover that. But when it comes to Troy, I got to be honest, don't know anything about Troy. So if you want to enlighten us on that after you give me your thoughts on the Penn State game.
Yeah, so the Penn State thing, I feel like it's super trendy right now to like be on the West Virginia bandwagon, and I kind of understand it. Garrett Green, starting to become a pretty darn good college quarterback. Only had 5 turnovers last year. They're returning some guys. Their backfield's good. Like, they're a good team. They're a solid Big 12 team. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think they even come close to the talent level of Penn State. And, this is the same coach that was on the hot seat just last season before they went on their run. The fans wanted him gone. Like legitimately, they wanted him fired in the middle of the season after their start. And now all of a sudden I'm supposed to buy into the fact that they're going to make a run for the Big 12, make a run for the playoff. No. Penn State has a new offensive coordinator. I don't want to butcher his name. I believe it's Coltonicki. And, he's coming in. I don't think that it fit last year with Aller. It's make or break for him if he wants to, earn some money, a high round draft pick in the NFL. it's time to get going. Their backs are awesome. We all know Singleton. But yeah, it just all lines up for me, and my projection backs it up that this game is going to be at least 10 plus. I don't see how I mean, the road crowd maybe, but still, Penn State's used to playing in the big house, and Ohio State, like the road crowd isn't really going to be a big impact for me. But yeah, I just think that there's too much hype on West Virginia, and I'm kind of playing against the hype in the market.
Completely agree with you. Once again, joined by my guy, Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. Clearly, he knows his stuff. I'm with you. Like, let's be just brutally honest about Penn State. They're more talented than everybody not named Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon. Like, they are who the college football playoff expansion was made for. The team that's not quite good enough to be top 4, but they're like 7, 8, 9. Like that's who Penn State is. That's who I expect them to be. And look, when you're more talented, especially in the trenches, which is where I think Penn State also has an advantage over West Virginia, I think they're just going to kind of move West Virginia around. They'll win by 2 touchdowns. That's kind of how I feel about it.
My projections have the final score being 33-19. So, not a crazy, Penn State's not going to come out and whip them. Like, they're not going to beat them, 42-10, but I think they'll pull away.
Like late touchdown cover. Yeah, exactly. Exactly like that.
Hopefully not with 4 seconds left in the game, though.
Hopefully not. Let's move to Troy, because you texted me about that one specifically, wanting to talk about it, and it just shows why the service you offer in terms of the sports gambling is great. So if you want to elaborate on that, I will give you the floor.
I think this is another me going against the market and, the hype, because we just watched Nevada play SMU down to the wire. Choate is their new coach, and, he's a good coach. And there's just a lot of course correction on Nevada. Like, people thought they were going to win like 1 or 2 games this year. And I still think they only win 1 or 2 games. I think we see this a lot. Early in the season with these bad teams. Like, their opponents are trying to figure themselves out throughout the season. Nevada's playing with their hair on fire already. Like, they know they're outmatched. They know they're outclassed, while other teams are trying to feel it out. I just think that SMU game last week, we're going to look back on that and say, dang, what happened there? SMU's pretty good, and Nevada's got 1 win. And my projections have Troy winning by like 17, and the line's 8.5. So it's an automatic play for me. Troy is always talented. I know they lost a lot of guys, and I think they only have 4 total returning starters this year. But they're always talented. They're in a recruiting hotbed down there. I think they're just going to put it on them.
Joined by Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine for all of these wonderful college football plays. He'll have NFL plays too whenever the NFL season starts. But that line opened at like 6, right? And then it moved to 8.5, correct?
So good segue, Jonathan. That was James Madison.
There it is. That's the third one. Which James Madison's perfect for these IU people, because Kurt Signetti coming from James Madison. I love Kurt Signetti. Jeez, man. He always makes me smile. He always has audio for me to play whenever he speaks, which is great.
I'm glad he's in the Big Ten.
I like him. Like, I gotta be honest, I didn't watch a ton of James Madison last year, to be fair. But the way that he talks, man, like he expects to win. And that's where I think it really starts with anything. If you have guys showing up and they're like, God, it's going to take us a few years, it's a red flag for me. Like, I want guys who show up and expect to win immediately. And Signetti definitely does that. He won it. James Madison, from my understanding, they're kind of in a good place to recruit. They're traditionally a pretty good program. You've got them to cover. You got them at -6. Now the line's up to -8, 8.5. What did you see with them? Why do you like JMU this year?
Yeah, it's something that we talked about off air. I just kind of wanted to highlight it, to kind of highlight the services that the Patreon offers. So I released my projections on Tuesday when JMU was -6. So if I release my projections on Tuesday and I got a -6, it's all the way up to -8 now. You got 2.5 points of CLV, closing line value. So that's just kind of one of the things that I think my service offers. We get in the market early at the best line and kind of, have that cushion there of what the public now thinks and what's being bet, handle, hold, all that stuff. So just a value that I wanted to relay. But like, we have to stop acting like James Madison wasn't an FCS powerhouse for years and then came up to the FBS and immediately won. And I think, you can draw a lot of comparisons with James Madison and North Dakota State. North Dakota State has had like 4 or 5 coaches since they started their run, and all they do is win. So I think it's just one of those programs where we see Signetti leave, and we automatically assume like rebuild or down. I still think they win 9-10 games this year. I think they have the roster to do it. They're talented, and they have some guys on the defense that I think are like future NFL players. So like a lot of, you can tell early on with not a lot of data in the first part of the season, you can tell it's a lot of, projections, obviously, but it's also kind of, the market isn't settled in yet. So you can kind of find those holes off public opinion and off the vibe of each team to kind of get those plays in like I have.
Yeah. And look, I say it all the time before you come on that you're one of the better, you are the best sports gambler that I know. And that's with all the respect to the Sack Man who does a lot of gambling stuff on Dan's show. Once again, joined by my guy, Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. You can find his Patreon in the link in his bio. All right, ZG. So yesterday, first off, before I move on, do you have any other picks that you want to go into?
Yeah, no more picks. They're all on my Twitter. You can find every projection for every game. But I did want to highlight, starting today through the end of October, 40% off all of my college football and NFL picks on Patreon. So if you go to my Twitter, sign up, you get 40% off each month. You get both every week. So had to plug myself, Jay Smith. Come on.
Of course. Yeah. I get it. That's part of why if you want, it's nice. So yesterday, I officially locked in my predictions for the upcoming college football season. I've got Oregon winning the Big Ten. And
don't hate it.
I love Ohio. Like, I don't love Ohio State. I love their team this year. I think they're awesome. But that game being in Eugene, when they play each other, I think that's the difference that allows them to be, undefeated in the Big Ten. And so I took them to win it. I do obviously have Ohio State making the at-large bids. But here's my question, and this is something that I haven't heard anyone else talk about. Notre Dame not being in a conference, you know how, like, there's a group of 5 team that makes the playoff? Mm-hmm. Would Notre Dame not be that team?
I don't think so. They treat Notre Dame. By the way, I am not a big Notre Dame guy, but they give Notre Dame a ton of like weird privileges because they're independent. So like there's scenarios, like the reason why they are okay with not getting a bye is because there's scenarios where they're playing the easiest schedule through the playoffs as a 5 seed. Like, but I don't think it counts as a group of 5 team. But yeah, I just had to get that off because Notre Dame's like, oh, poor me, I can't get a bye, knowing darn well exactly why they chose not to.
Yeah, that's very much how. And like, they do get a bye. They don't have to play a conference championship game. Like that is the bye. And so I was sitting down and I was making my predictions and I was like, who's my group of 5 team? Could it be Notre Dame? Like, is that how that works? My group of 5 team though is the University of Texas at San Antonio Roadrunners.
Wow, I love that. That
is, like, I'm sitting here, I'm looking, and everyone's like, Boise State. And I'm like, Boise State lost their starting quarterback. He's gone. Go Hogs, by the way. He's going to start for Arkansas this year. And it's like, oh, well, they had this big-time former 5-star transfer come in. And it's like, no, that guy's the backup. So people are loving Boise State. I've seen some people on Memphis, a little bit of Appalachian State as well.
Liberty too. Those are the big ones I've heard too.
And I'm looking at UTSA and I'm like, Jeff Traylor has shown up and done nothing but win there consistently. 12-2 in 2021, 11-3 in 2022, 9-4 last year. Hey, I'm willing to bet that he wins 10 games this year coming out of the American. So I like UTSA. Who is kind of your off the board playoff pick for this year?
So I've already kind of mentioned it, but I do think that JMU has a chance to kind of keep it up. Okay. Like I think they're severely underrated. I think they're as talented as any of the teams that you just said, I think they can certainly do it. It's just a matter of, seeing this new coach kind of be consistent and go through it. I like JMU. And I think if I had to pick from the original group we just said, I think UTSA would be on the board, but I like Liberty. I do. There's something about Liberty. Like, I know we saw them last year get destroyed by Oregon, and, it could be perceived as a, one hit wonder type of thing, but I think they have just gotten better and better and better every year. So I think Liberty's a candidate to be like the next Boise State.
Joined by Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine for all of your winning gambling picks. So Liberty's interesting because they kind of rose to power when Hugh Freeze was there. He's not there anymore. And look, whether you like Hugh Freeze or not, he's a good football coach. He's not there anymore. He coached
from a hospital bed. You have to like him.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. And the thing with my thing with Liberty, and you were like, I don't know what it is about Liberty. And the answer is they're incredibly soft schedule. Like, they're probably going to go undefeated. They don't really play anybody. So they're probably the safe pick. I think the other, like, did you ever make a prediction and you like surprise yourself because you realize that because I said this, therefore like this other thing has to happen? Has that ever like happened to you?
Yeah, where you like, it's going through a season or something, and like you're like, oh crap, like this team that I like has to do this because I have this predict. Yeah, definitely, and that's a bad spot to be in, and I find myself in that spot an awful lot with betting.
So I think the Big 12 only gets one team into the playoff, and I think it's Utah. But you could tell me that it's going to be Arizona or Kansas State or even Kansas. But, like, I was sitting here and I was like, I don't know. I think that the Big 10 gets 3 teams in: Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. I think the SEC, I think I've got them as 4 teams that get in: Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss. I think Notre Dame gets in, and I think the ACC gets 2 teams in Miami and Clemson. And I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the Big 12. You grimaced a little bit when I said that. Do you not like Clemson or Miami?
I just think there's more of a chance that that a fourth non-Big Ten team gets in over a non-ACC champ team.
That's totally fair. So you think that Michigan would have a better chance of getting in over Clemson?
Yeah, if it was similar resumes in terms of record and conference play, I think the nod goes to the Big Ten in this new system almost every time at this point.
That's totally fair. I wouldn't mind that. But even if that happens, like, no second Big 12 team, which feels really weird because I thought coming into it, like, okay, like every conference will probably get 2, SEC and Big 12, or Big 12. I mean, the Big 10, like they probably have 3 or 4, but I don't know, man. Like when I look at the Big 12, they're all so even. Like, they are the AFC South of college football, where they're like, I've got some question marks. I think a lot of the teams are really similar. I think like we look at that conference and we come out of it and we're like, geez, like everyone's 9-3.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
You can kind of feel that push and pull from the media and the Big 12 conference. Like it's on the side of like, everyone's going to disregard the Big 12. They're going to cannibalize each other. There's no great teams. There's no good teams. And then you have the Big 12 trying to brand itself as the deepest conference in football, as, the most competitive top to bottom conference in football. I think that's been an interesting offseason storyline on how we're going to view the Big 12 this season. I don't think anyone really knows. But yeah, I think that something to look out for, just like off storylines and media purposes, is how the Big 12 is perceived throughout the season. Because if it's, just right now, knowing the ACC, knowing the Big 12, if it was similar resumes and you had to fill one of those last spots in the playoffs, are you picking the Big 12? I think you're picking a Clemson or a Miami.
Yep, that's exactly how I feel about it. Oh man, I'm so ready, man. Like, I would consider myself once again joined by my good friend Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine for all of your gambling selections. So I would consider myself a bit of a college football purist. Like, I don't love
really.
Yeah. And but like I get it. Like we want to be more inclusive. We want for more teams to feel like they have success. Everybody gets a trophy. I get it. but I got to be honest though, like I'm excited to debate with people about why 9-3 so-and-so should get in over 10-2 so-and-so. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's way more fun than trying to pick, 4 teams out of 5 great teams in a 4-team set. I would rather debate the edges than the top. The top deserves to play, and that shouldn't even be a question. The debate should be around the edges, and I think we kind of finally found that.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I have to ask you, you don't have to give bets, but just who you think wins, because we've got some pretty big marquee games coming up this week on the schedule. I can't wait. It gets started tonight, 7:30, Arkansas against Arkansas at Pine Bluff. I know that's one that everyone has circled. Can you believe that there are people in the chat here on YouTube who thought that I didn't know who Matt Jones was? I can't believe it. But anyway, we don't have to talk about that. Seriously, though, Colorado, North Dakota State tonight. I know which way you're leaning, but you can go ahead and tell the people.
Yeah, I think Colorado wins. I don't think 10, 11, 12, kind of the margin of victory. But yeah, I don't.
Are you concerned at all about just like the newness of the roster? Like it's 5 new offensive linemen. Like part of why I like for North Dakota State to cover tonight is just because like they're a pretty solidified unit. Like there hasn't been a lot of change. Whereas like for Colorado, it's a lot of these guys' first games playing for Colorado.
Yeah, I think specifically on the offensive line is where we will see a pretty big improvement. They did cycle out a ton of players on both sides of the ball. That's the Dion way. But I think they're better. I think they're just more talented. I think they're bigger. I think they're more physical, specifically on the offensive line. Jordan Seaton, a true freshman, is going to start. Like Ohio State wanted him bad. Like Georgia wanted him bad. Like, he's a true freshman, but he's clearly better than what they had last year. So I think that I don't think we see too much difference, offense, defense as a whole. But I think we kind of see the play elevate a little bit because of the line play and, being able to kind of, control the clock, all the cliches is kind of just going to help the team in every aspect, defense as well. So I think you'll see that slight improvement and it'll make a big difference.
Okay. Once again, joined by my good friend, Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine for all of your gambling selections. Clemson, Georgia, that game noon on Saturday. Georgia pretty easily, right?
Yeah, Georgia by at least 2 touchdowns. I think Clemson's going to surprise some people this year. I think they're still really talented, but I just don't know. Dabo just doesn't seem to have that spark anymore. I think they'll be good. I think they'll be in the mix for the playoff. But Georgia, I feel like Georgia's just kind of Georgia.
Yeah, look, the only guy who's proven that he can beat Georgia is working for College Game Day now. Yep. And so it's tough to pick against them. The issue with Clemson is Dabo Swinney refuses to use the transfer portal. Like that's until that problem is fixed, they'll be somewhere between the 10th and 17th best team in college football. Are you at all interested in South Dakota State and Oklahoma State? Like South Dakota State, one of those kind of power FCS schools. Does that game interest you at all?
Yeah, I picked a couple of those games to project out of my projections, just some of the notable ones, and that was one of them that I had. I have Oklahoma State winning, by 12 in my projections. I find it interesting though. Oklahoma State is like a flagship program in our lifetime. Like they are always at least baseline good and can beat someone. So I think it's just kind of crazy now that we're seeing the lines come out for these major FBS teams versus FCS teams, and they're kind of small. I remember years ago where there was, some of those games were in the 60s on the spread. Like it just feels like the gap's closing a little bit. I don't know why, but it just feels like that gap's closing. They have Ollie Gordon. Gordon, one of the best, and they're only what is the spread? 11 or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
That's crazy.
I think part of it is the transfer portal. I'm sure we've got guys transferring down to play at these FCS schools at a little bit of a higher rate, but I'm sure that's part of it. Miami plays Florida at 3:30. Miami, last time I checked, only favored by 2.5, which kind of surprised me. I like Miami. A lot of people do, which makes me nervous to like Miami. My boss, though, that dude's crazy.
I've got Florida.
Really?
Yeah. Not by much. I think it's going to be wire to wire. I wouldn't be shocked if Miami wins, but just trust my data. I have Florida by a point.
Okay, fair enough. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, that game's a big one. I think Notre Dame goes 11-1 this year, and I think that their one loss comes on Saturday to Texas A&M.
Yeah, been saying it. The market tells us what they think now. Notre Dame started out favored in this game. It flipped all the way to Texas A&M -3. Not sure what it's at now, but Notre Dame losing their best offensive lineman doesn't help. But I also, even with him, I just did not see Notre Dame winning this game. Mike Elko's got a bunch of talent. He's a great coach. Texas A&M isn't, little sisters of the they still have dudes, very, very much one of the most talented rosters in football still. And I don't like Notre Dame, so it's a little biased.
I'm right there with you. Last question for you, Zach, and I'll let you go. Once again, joined by my good buddy, Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter. Seriously, gives out a ton of winners every week for football at ZG The Grapevine. Check out his Patreon to get all those picks. $15 a month, right? For all of them?
So, I think it's $25 for college football, $25 for NFL, and it's $45 for both. But again, you go and use the code ZGTG, and you can get 40% off the both package, and you're sitting somewhere around $27 a month.
Okay. USC at LSU. That is the Sunday night football game. I'm fascinated by it. I think Brian Kelly is overrated as a coach. Not saying he's a bad coach. I just don't think he's as good as everyone else does. Lincoln Riley, on the other hand, that's the best offensive mind in college football. I think USC is massively underrated this year because when Lincoln Riley's your coach, he scored points with Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, obviously, Baker Mayfield when he was the OC. No matter who plays quarterback for Lincoln Riley, his teams score points. With that being said, I do like for LSU to win.
I knew you were going to do the switch. I'm gonna leave this one on a cliffhanger. I have a play on that game. Who knows what side I'm on unless you go to the Twitter. So, yeah.
I like it. Zach, thanks for your time on camera, which is great. Rocking that's an awesome Pacers hat. I need you to send me the link for that because that thing looks pretty sick.
I got it at Gainbridge.
Oh, nice. When you went to watch LeBron?
No, it's I went to watch
Cleveland.
The Knicks. The Knicks. First time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go. Zach. Thanks for your time, man. You were great as always.
Thanks, Jay Smith.
See ya. That's my guy, Zack Gray, the one and only. Follow him on Twitter at ZG The Grapevine. Seriously, he puts out a ton of winners. Clearly very knowledgeable in the world of college football and the NFL. Coming back in 4 minutes, Chris Ballard sat down at the podium and was asked a lot of questions yesterday. I've got a lot of audio for you from that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you to Zack Gray for doing like 30 minutes with me there on college football bets over the weekend. Oh, man. Jeez. Chris Ballard said a lot of things yesterday, and let's be honest, we're all highly concerned about the secondary. And look, Chris Ballard, pretty bullish about the group, and he was asked why he is so bullish about the group.
They're young. They're going to continue to get better. Sometimes you got to be able to meet, like things don't always work out, even when you're trying to acquire a player. I'm not saying we didn't try to do some things. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. But we do think we have good young talent back there, and we have a lot of belief in our front. So we'll continue to let these guys grow and come on. They don't become players without playing. I mean, I think sometimes we forget that. They got to play.
Good old Chris Ballard there talking about the secondary and why he's bullish on the group and why he thinks that they could develop. And develop is the main word there. Because they have to develop because they aren't very good right now. They weren't very good last year. It's the exact same room. The exact same guys are in the Colts building set to play corner and safety. And let's be honest, it is the worst group of players on the team. Like if you go by position groups, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, quarterback, receiver, all that. Secondary, hands down the worst. It's not close. But as Chris Ballard said in that clip, this Colts, secondary is incredibly young. Incredibly young. And when it comes to this Colts secondary, I think that the Colts really only hope for them is for them to have a Jordan Love-like year. Okay, Jordan Love, people are just, they love him right now. Everyone loves Love. Everybody. And last year was Jordan Love's first year as the starter of the Green Bay Packers. And there were some ups and downs throughout the first half of the season. And by ups and downs, I mean nothing but downs. First half of the season, Jordan Love was terrible. People were completely out on him. People, made fun of the Packers for trading up to draft him. And it was so terrible. And Jordan Love's first 8 games last year, he threw for 1,700 yards, 12 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he only completed 59% of his passes. That's what Will Levis did basically in 9 games last year. Okay, Jordan Love started the year like he was Will Levis, and people were completely and totally out on him. Then in his last 9 games, a light bulb went off, and he was awesome. He threw for 2,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he completed 68% of his passes. The more he played, the better he got. Now he's making a ton of money, and everyone loves him. Seriously, everyone seems to love Jordan Love right now because of the way that he finished last year. Right? And they just completely ignore the struggles that he had in the first half of the season. Like the first half of the season, the Packers didn't look like a playoff team. They were 3-5. And they looked like they were about to have to draft a new quarterback. Then Jordan Love figured it out. And I really hope that we see something similar from this Colts secondary this season. Okay, that's what I kind of hope we see, because Chris Ballard is right in the idea that players don't become players until they actually play, especially young dudes that don't have a ton of experience. Okay, like Nick Cross has looked better this preseason than he did last year. He has, and look, it's the preseason, so it doesn't really mean all that much, but he could have looked worse, but he hasn't. He's looked better. Julian Blackmon looks amazing this year after having another year under his belt. And hopefully Julian Blackmon's able to cover for some of these guys as they work out the kinks early in the season. Maybe he can even help bring them along a little bit. But when I look at this Colts secondary, like in order for this Colts defense to be good, they need a Jordan Love type season where maybe it's rough to start, but by week 7, week 8, they figure things out and they go from being this horrendously bad secondary to being above average, right? Because look, I think that if Jordan Love can learn how to play quarterback, the most difficult position to play in football, if he can learn how to do that at an elite level in 8 games after being horrendous in the first 9 or whatever, then I don't think it's inconceivable to think that these young Colts secondary players couldn't do the same. Go from being bad, because that's how it's going to start, to being above average. I don't think that that's out of the question. And when Chris Ballard was talking about the secondary and why he's bullish on them, he mentioned the defensive line. Chris Ballard, because of his drafting and his willingness to go out and get these defensive linemen, he's got a bit of a luxury to gamble on this secondary while they lean on that defensive front, because that defensive front should be dominant. The Colts were third in sacks last year as a team. It's pretty good. They bring everybody back, minus Ibukam, who tore his Achilles. He could potentially come back this year, but let's be honest, that's not going to happen. And they also add Latu, who by all accounts is going to be awesome this year. Raekwon Davis, who was decent last year in Miami, and Isaiah Land, who I thought played pretty well during the preseason. They are better up front on the defensive side of the football than they were last year. So hopefully that buys the secondary a little bit of time to figure things out. Okay. If the Jordan Love development arc happens for this Colts secondary this year, then, the defensive front has to be good early. And by the end of the year, the Colts have a pretty good defense. But that development has to happen, like Chris Ballard wants for it to. And Chris Ballard talks about development all the time. And I think that is one of his biggest flaws as a general manager. And I will get into that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a good one. Chris Ballard said a lot of things yesterday, and look, I've lived in Indianapolis for 3 years now. Listened to a fairly decent amount of Chris Ballard press conferences, and I've noticed this trend about Chris Ballard, just the way that he discusses things. So there's a saying, in sports, football, basketball, baseball, whatever it is. There's a saying that general managers are concerned about what the team is going to look like in 5 years. And coaches are worried about what the team looks like right now. And it makes sense because the coach's job is directly dependent upon how many games they win that year, right now. Whereas for the general manager, their job is dependent upon being able to sell the future to the owner of like, hey, I know that we went, 7-10 this year, but we got this new quarterback. We're thinking we'll go, 10-7 next year. And then the year after that, we'll go 13-4 and we'll be competing for Super Bowls every year. Like that is how the general manager keeps his job. Whereas, coaches are, I got to win right now or I'm going to get fired. And it creates this interesting push and pull between the two. And I was thinking about this and I was like, you know what? General managers direct franchises like how my wife drives when we go on vacation. My wife, good driver. Okay, like not going to cut people off. Very, defensive driver. I know that when she's driving, we're pretty safe, right? Like I know that, but she is incredibly patient when she drives. She's going to set the cruise control to the speed limit, and we're going to just kind of creep along the interstate while we're heading to, wherever we're going. And love her. She's great. It's good that she's patient. But, man, it drives me crazy whenever we're driving. We're going, like, under the speed limit. She's like, oh, Jonathan, I found this new song that I really like. Can we listen to it? And I'm like, yeah, of course. We listen to the song. And then she's like, oh, I found this new podcast that I really like. Can we listen to it? I'm like, yeah, that's great. Can you just go, like, a little bit faster? Can we just go, like, 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, please? And, she's very patient. And I believe that this is how general managers build their teams, very patiently, not in a rush, just, very patient. Whereas coaches, they want to direct franchises like how I drive on vacation. I'm not putting the car on cruise control. I'm getting in the left lane. I'm going by everybody, and we're going to get to our destination as quickly as possible. Okay, that saying that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Yeah, that's a bunch of hooey. It's about the destination. Okay, I'm going to the beach because I want to be at the beach, not because I want to be on the interstate for the next 12 hours. That's just kind of the way that I view it. And I believe that's how coaches are as well. They are impatient. They want to win right now. And when I look at Chris Ballard, he is the most patient. And I think that is one of his biggest issues. When you listen to him do press conferences and, he's asked about, the secondary, or he's asked about, Anthony Richardson, whatever. It's always about development. It's never about this season. Hey, Chris Ballard, what do you think about Nick Cross? I think he just needs more reps. He just, he's young. He needs more plays. He needs more opportunities. He hasn't played a ton of football. And eventually, when he gets enough reps, then he'll be good. And it's the same thing with Anthony Richardson. Hey, Chris Ballard, what do you think about Anthony Richardson this year? He's really young. He's 22. He only played 12 quarters last year. And, I thought when he did play, he was good, but he just needs more reps. He's going to be up and down because he hasn't had enough reps, and eventually he'll be good. That is the bulk of the message that we hear from Chris Ballard whenever he talks about players and the team. It's never about right now. It is always about what's coming up down the road. It's always about what's going to happen in 5 years. And part of it is understandable because he is the general manager. And him keeping his job is directly tied to the future of the Colts. Okay? Like, he has to be able to walk into Jim Irsay's office and Jim Irsay say, hey, why did we go 9-8? And then the answer is, well, Anthony Richardson was a rookie. We think that when he gets, a few more reps, we'll be good enough to do, whatever. And then Jim Irsay has to buy whatever Chris Ballard's selling, say, okay, and then send him on his merry way. But here's the thing. Yes, general managers are supposed to be concerned about the future. It's incredibly important. But general managers still have to have the presence of mind to realize when they need to make a move for the current season. Look, I've lived in Indianapolis for 3 years. Haven't seen Chris Ballard do this. He is yet to show that he has a concern for the current season. Everything appears to be about the future. And if you don't believe me, let's just look at this offseason. Colts linebackers, solid. Defensive line, heavily invested in. That defensive line is going to be good this year. Offensive line, bringing a bunch of guys back. Everyone tells me that this Colts offensive line is supposed to be good. There's been investment at receiver over these past couple of years. Josh Downs, Alec Pierce apparently had a good camp. Adonai Mitchell they're bringing in. Michael Pittman Jr. had a great year last year. They're good at running back. Jonathan Taylor. There's some questions around Anthony Richardson, but there's clearly confidence that Shane Steichen is going to help Anthony Richardson have a good year. The one glaring hole in the team is secondary, especially at the cornerback position. And it's in moments like those where Chris Ballard needs that light bulb to go off and say, you know what? If we have a great corner this year, if we can bring one in, we could be really good. And instead of people talking about how everyone's sleeping on the Colts, even though apparently everyone is, instead of that being the conversation around Indianapolis, they brought in L'Jarius Sneed. If they had made that trade, I think people would be excited about the Colts. The conversation wouldn't be, the Colts, they might sneak into the playoffs. No, I think the conversation would be, hey, the Colts could win the division. But instead of making that move that clearly needed to be made, that trade for L'Jarius Sneed needed to happen for the Colts. Instead of doing that, Chris let's give Juju Brents some more reps because that's what he needs. That way he'll be good in 3 years. Let's give Jalen Jones a few more reps. That way, he's good in, about 3 years or whatever it is. There is no switch that goes off in Chris Ballard's mind that says, hey, we have an opportunity to be good right now if I do this. That switch just doesn't exist in his brain. It doesn't. At some point, the best general managers, especially Brett Veach in Kansas City, they have to be able to flip that switch of, hey, we have an opportunity to be good this year, so we should probably do that. Especially when you haven't made the playoffs in 3 years. You would think that, that switch would be dying to get flipped. But for Chris Ballard, it isn't. He is incredibly content to pedal around the middle and compete for a playoff spot, even though based off of what Chris Ballard said yesterday, he does think that this is a team that should compete for the playoffs.
We feel like we will be in the mix. Look, we were in the mix a year ago. And sometimes, I think I said this earlier, where sometimes the scars are good for you. Hard times can be good for you. Defeat, failure can be good for you if you handle it right. I have a lot of belief in the leadership, one of Shane, but also these players, from guys that have been there and been through a lot, and they're all good players and they're all committed. It'll be fun to watch this team grow through the season and go through it.
Chris Ballard talking about how he expects for the Colts to be in the mix, just like they were last year. Look, last year wasn't good enough, man. Being in the mix isn't good enough. Never has been. Okay, being in the mix should not be the standard. And that's what it feels like the standard is here in Indianapolis. I really thought that Chris Ballard was going to say, you know what, yeah, we expect to make the playoffs this year. We think Anthony Richardson's going to be good. We like the rest of our roster. Nope. We expect to be in the mix. We expect to hover around 9-8 or 10-7. And, maybe we make the playoffs if we get lucky. Maybe if Jacksonville loses in week 17 to the Buccaneers by 12 points like they have to, then maybe we'll make the playoffs. Pedaling in mediocrity. We wouldn't feel that way, though, if he went and he got L'Jarius Sneed. If that light bulb in his head had gone off of, you know what, we need help in the secondary. Let me go make a move and bring in L'Jarius Sneed, or let me go sign Justin Simmons, or let me bring Stephon Gilmore back, or let me go sign Xavier Howard, or any one of these other free agent cornerbacks. But no, instead, we're going to run everything back. We're going to give Juju Brents more reps. We're going to give Jalen Jones more reps so that in 3 years they're ready to go. That's what we're going to do. Come on, man. You got a young rookie quarterback. Like, people talk a lot about how you need to surround young rookie quarterbacks with weapons on offense, but you also need to give them a defense that can bail them out. The Colts don't really have that because that secondary is so horrendously bad. So horrendously bad. Brutal, brutal, brutal. Thanks for tuning in to The Real Jonathan Smith Show today. The Dan Dockett Show is coming your way next from noon to 3. I know Lynn Dunn is set to join his show at 1:15. Talk about this Indiana Fever team that won a big game last night at home against the Connecticut Sun. I told you yesterday that they were going to win last night. They play again tomorrow night as well. Big game on the road against the Chicago Sky. Another Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark matchup. Should be fun. Should be entertaining because whenever Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese play basketball against each other, it's awesome. It's wildly entertaining. Twitter's going to be an awesome place over the course of those 2.5 hours. Should be a blast. So Lynn Dunn joining the show at 1. And another quick little announcement here. The Dan Dockett Show, not happening tomorrow. Dan is off tomorrow, going on a little short vacation, I believe, for Labor Day weekend. The Real Jonathan Smith Show will not be 10 to noon. The Real Jonathan Smith Show will run from 10 to 1 p.m., so covering that first hour of the Dan Dockett Show. So I'll be on for 3 hours tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. I will talk to you tomorrow from 10 to 1 p.m. The Dan Dockett Show is coming your way here in about 5 minutes.